Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Ag Report. I'm Jim Finn. My guests this week are Adam Woods from the Farmers Journal, Pat Carroll, chairperson of the IFA in South Tipperary, and a report from the Teagasc National Dairy Conference. My first guest this morning is Sean Cooney from Teagasc, and we are going to be discussing the options programme and the newly announced organic scheme, which was announced during the week. Good morning, Sean, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jim. I'll keep it nice and brief. Look, as you say, the organic scheme is now open. We've had a lot of inquiries for that scheme. It's open until the 12th of December. Orla Welsh, as you know, is our local organic advisor in the Tipperary region. So I suppose any queries that people have, they can feel free to contact the local office there. And if they ask for Orla, that she'll keep them informed. The other thing I just want to mention there in relation to the organic scheme is there's an information event in the Talbot Hotel on Wednesday the 3rd of December at 7 p.m. And I suppose that will go through what's involved in the scheme for anyone that's considering joining the scheme.
That's the hotel down in Clonmel.
That's the hotel in Clonmel.
Yeah, or the Talboton Hotel. Yeah, okay. Sorry for cutting across you there.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Jim. So look, I suppose that's the story with the organic scheme. It was open last year. We had a tranche of it open, and then it's been remained closed. So there's been a lot of interest in that. People wanting to join the first time round. So I suppose they have the opportunity. Now the window is tight. The 12th of December there is the deadline for entering it, as far as I know. So I suppose there's a small window of opportunity there to get in for farmers.
And was there much of an uptake in Tipperary last year?
It was quite high, Jim. Yeah. I suppose a lot of dry stock farmers would have. I wouldn't have the exact numbers off the top of my head. Yeah. A lot of dry stock farmers did enter the scheme, and I suppose nationally the uptake has been quite good. So I suppose, look, it probably won't be as easy to get in this time from my understanding, but I suppose that information meeting on the 3rd of December, the specialists will go through and the department will go through what's involved.
Well, of course, they'd want to be letting people in if they want to meet their targets for 2030 when they wanted 10% in, and it's only slightly over 5% at the moment nationally.
That's right, Jim. But I suppose from my understanding is they're trying to gear it more towards the tillage sector at the moment and trying to encourage a bit more diversity within the organic. So, look, I suppose time will tell. I'm not saying this will be the only one that will be open, but I suppose Orla asked me just to put this out. So that's kind of...
Right, okay.
That's where I'm at with it.
And before we go to the other topic then, just give out the date and the time for that meeting in the Talbot Hotel to explain about the organic scheme.
Yeah, so the date and time again is the 3rd of December at 7 p.m.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, you want to tell us all about the options programme?
Yeah, so look, I suppose it's that time of the year again. Sure, Teagasc and Tipperary have run a numerous options programme back through the years. I suppose the Teagasc options is for farm family programme is designed to provide new thinking, generate new ideas, and generate additional income on and off farm for farmers. So I suppose our programme consists of a series of workshops, and it covers a wide range of topics. And I suppose I'll just maybe usually, like, our guest speakers would be farmers who have successfully diversified and will speak and when we speak at the workshop. So I'll just give a small overview of what we're intending to do this year. So the 2nd of December is our first night. That's a Tuesday night. We're going to run it in our usual venue, which is the Teagasc office in Thurles. For those of you that don't know where that is, it's in the same entrance nearly as the Semple Stadium gates to the hurling field in Thurles. On the first night, we'll have 3 speakers. I suppose Mary Ryan there from the local enterprise office, she's going to speak a small bit about the funding and what's available from her side there. And that's for farmers that are contemplating diversification. Our second speaker there on the night will be Michael Sweeney from Neffen Renewables. And I suppose he's going to discuss some of the areas of renewable, but he's going to be specifically honing in on the whole area of biogas, which is an emerging thing that's coming in around Tipperary. So I suppose he's going to be seeing is there any potential there for farmers, and I suppose maybe what his own company can offer farmers as a mode of diversification. Our final speaker then on the night would be Padraig O'Leary. Padraig is our new forestry specialist in the area. Many of you probably haven't met him yet, but I suppose he took over from Michael Summers in the Tipperary, kind of Clare region, and he's covering that area. So he's going to be looking at what opportunities are there for farmers in the area of forestry. And when I say forestry, so there's agroforestry as well as some of the forestry schemes, and I suppose there's farmers out there that would have mature forests at this stage, and I suppose he's open to discuss that, what are the different options for those farmers and where they'll be going. So I suppose that's our first night. So Mary Ryan, the local enterprise office, she'll be discussing the funding. Michael Sweeney is going to be talking about the biogas just in summary, and Padraig O'Leary is going to be discussing forestry.
Okay, the next night then.
So our second night then is the 9th of December, so that's the Tuesday night after. So we will line up with speakers there. I suppose our first speaker there is Clotilde Kiley. She's a farmer from the Cumberland Mountains in Waterford, and she's going to be looking at the whole area of food marketing and agri-tourism. So she does a lot of market gardening. She sells it at local markets. But the second thing then she's involved in also is the agri-tourism, and she'll demonstrate, or she'll be given a case study on how she sells her how she promotes the tourism in the Cumbria area.
Okay.
So Patrick Killeen then is going to be speaking from Leader. He's going to outline what funding Leader have for farmers who are diversifying and maybe where the opportunities are there for farmers. So that's our second speaker, and on the night our third speaker there will be David Kennedy. Himself and his brother Michael they're farming there near in Skahina Rinka, and they have a fitness and well-being business, and I suppose they're going to be, when we think about diversification at farm level, we usually think about somebody developing a hard product, but in this case, I suppose it's more of a soft service, and I suppose they're going to be telling farmers about what service they have on offer, and the second thing is they're going to be explaining to farmers how they sell this on a world stage. So it's something a bit different, but I suppose it's relevant to what we're trying to promote. So I suppose that's basically the roundup of our 2 nights, Jim.
Right. So it's only a 2-night event. It's not like, I remember when that started, it used to be 8 nights.
Yeah. So look, I suppose in previous years I would have had 4 nights. Mm-hmm. 4 nights, and that was the way it was. I think things this year kind of got a bit away on me, and I suppose we're heading into December, so we decided to cap it at 2 nights. And look, I suppose I'm constantly taking calls from people who are diversifying and wanting to diversify, and I suppose we do keep a record of those people. And like, I suppose usually I would be if I think there's a need for a further maybe a follow-on session or that we can have that maybe early in the new year, or maybe an on-site visit. So, but like I suppose at the moment that's kind of what we have designed at the moment is a 2-night program.
Okay, Sean. So look just give me those 2 dates again, and at what time they're starting off at.
So the 2nd of December, Jim, 7 o'clock in the evening in Thurles is the first night, and the 9th of December is the second night, and the same time again 7 o'clock in the evening. So I suppose there's no booking in. All are welcome. It's a free course. And I suppose the whole idea is that farmers would be able to network and maybe, broaden their horizons in the area of diversification.
Yeah, and of course we've had some great success down through the years, so any farmer that's thinking of diversifying, whether it is the farmer himself or his partner, they should definitely turn out on both of those nights in Thurles for the options program.
That's it, and it's trying to encourage farmers to utilise what resources they have at their disposal in their own farm gates, and I suppose that's really what we're about.
Okay, well look, thanks very much for joining us this morning, Sean. That, listeners, was Sean Coney from Teagasc. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Adam Woods from the Farmers Journal. And you may remember I had Adam on last week, and we were talking about Brazil and all, maybe the good things that are happening in agriculture in Brazil. But in the past week, we've had a different story, and Adam is going to fill us in with that different story. Let's start off with the tagging.
Yeah, Jim. Look, I suppose earlier this month, ourselves and the Irish Farmers Association made the trip to Brazil. After that World Meat Congress that we spoke about, we had a little bit of a trip after that, and we travelled 3,000 kilometres across sort of east from the city of Cuiabá, which is in Mato Grosso, across to Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. And during that sort of trip, we would have visited farms and livestock marts and agricultural supply stores. And within those farms and within those livestock marts, we've seen, very little evidence of tagging, to be honest. Animals coming into marts, no tags whatsoever in them. And it's almost gone back to, in terms of branded sheep in a way, because they come into a crush when they come off the lorry, and the minute they're going through that crush, it's just an iron brand with paint is basically on the side of them. And that basically identifies them in terms of selling with, as I said, no tags at all. A lot of animals with holes in the rears with no tags. So obviously tag removal. We've seen numerous applications for removing tags while over there, and just calls into question the whole traceability system and in terms of monitoring, and goes back to our antibiotic story as well, as regards, if there isn't a system there for individual tagging, well, how can you monitor what animal gets?
As far as the tagging is concerned, things haven't changed in 15 years ago since the IFA were out there before?
Yeah, would you believe 2007? It's almost 20 years. If time flies, and they would have found a lot of discrepancy out there when they were out there. And yeah, there has been CISPOV. It's an application and sort of a tagging system that some farmers can sign up to. And look, Brazil have, I suppose, targets to be fully tagged in terms of a national monitoring system by 2032. But the farmers that we spoke to on the ground aren't buying into that at all, and they say it can't work, it won't work. The vastness and the scale of the farms, in terms of thousands of cattle, cows calving outside all the time, in terms of tagging, from birth, very, very difficult. And to be honest, they don't want to do it. A lot of the farmers we spoke to talked about, Europe. They see Europe as being over-regulated and farmers quite constrained in what they can do, and they don't want to go down that road. I guess China's taking a lot of their beef and other countries without the stipulation that Europe would apply to them, and farmers don't want to go that route, I guess. So, yeah, questions have to be asked then, will it ever get to that point? I don't think it will, to be honest. Personally, from being in the country, the sheer scale of things over there will never lend itself to producing to the same level or standard as an EU farmer. And then that calls into the whole question about Mercosur and applying the same standards and the thing we've been arguing about.
Yeah, and of course that's the actual follow-on, Adam, really is that there's absolutely no way that Brazilian beef should be coming into Europe, because we've been told from Brussels that they'll have to meet the same standards as we have to meet here in Ireland, or our beef coming from any one of the European Union countries.
Yeah, we wrote to the Commission, Jim, and they came back to us and they said, in terms of presenting our findings to them, and they said, look, we have certain farms approved in Brazil for supplying the EU, and we're happy that those farms are compliant. But on the back shot of that, I could have been one of those farms walking into that agricultural supply store in Mato Grosso or Bahia or any of the other states and buying that antibiotic, buying that critical level antibiotic, and there was no barcode on the bottle, so there's no record of where that antibiotic went to, and I don't have to sign for that antibiotic or anything in terms of who I was or what I was. So I could have been one of those farmers, beef destined for Europe, and here I can buy any amount of antibiotics in terms of, or hormones for that matter. So huge questions there. They seem confident, and they've kicked back big time to us, saying that they do a lot of residue testing coming in, and they can't dictate to Brazil what way they monitor antibiotic use on their farms. And I'd be a little bit worried about that, in terms of, we were told that similar standards are being applied. What we found was something completely different.
But and of course we should now be informing the European consumer, and
yes,
particularly the consumer, in the sense that we all know how dangerous antibiotics are now, and the damage that they're doing within the human chain as well as the animal chain, because resistance to the various antibiotics that were so important to us in the past. We're building up resistance to those, and there hasn't been any new antibiotic developed over the last 20, 25 years.
Absolutely. Professor Martin Cormack, and a leading professor in clinical bacteriology in University College Galway, we spoke to him as part of this investigation, and his opinion was that Europe has done an awful lot of work in the last 20, 25 years around the restricting the use of antibiotics and responsible use of antibiotics, and eliminating those critically important ones, because we need them for human medicine. Like, there's people dying every day because they're resistant to antibiotics. So we need to be very cognizant of that. And like the World Health Organization reckon more people will die by 2050 due to antimicrobial resistance or antibiotic resistance than cancer. So this is a huge problem coming down the road. And he said what's happening in Brazil is contrary to all the work that we've done in Europe for the last 20, 25 years. So, for example, I went into one of those stores and bought a Cetaphil. It's a product containing a third generation cephalosporin, and that's critically important in human health. And the lady behind the desk actually said to me, "Do you just want one box or do you want some more?" And I had no Portuguese. I had no herd number, no tag number, no proof of requirement, and here this critically important antibiotic was being thrown out across the desk, and I don't think that's acceptable. And I think serious, answers have to come from the Commission as regards what's happening there, and as regards antimicrobial resistance and fighting that battle. It's a global battle. It's not just a battle in Europe. It's a global battle, and we need to be very, very cognizant of that.
Did you come across any animal welfare issues when you were over there?
No, not really. I guess you'd be concerned that they're just coming to the end of the dry season, and you might have been concerned with some of the condition of the animals coming into March. They're a different type of an animal, I guess, and maybe in terms of coping with heat and stuff like that, they've different ways. But in general, no. I guess questions definitely would be asked around veterinary involvement on farms. We sort of spoke to some farmers saying that you don't really call a vet because you're maybe you could be hundreds of miles from a local village in terms of the vastness and the scale of out there. And look, it's similar to other countries. We've a letter in this week in the paper from Barry Murphy in Australia saying something similar is happening over there, that if you have a cow calving at night and she can't calve and there's problems in Australia, there isn't a lot of hope for her because the vet is that far away. They won't be coming out to her. So there's a bad story there. And look, it's similar in Brazil. It's something similar as regards what's happening there on farms. But it's just around the monitoring. And I guess Irish farmers, I can't say ban all imports into the European Union, because exports are so important to Ireland. We export 90% of what we produce, but what we can say is any beef that comes into the European market, it has to be of a similar standard, and there has to be a level playing field. Because if you look at beef at the moment in Brazil, it's €3.20 a kilo. And even you look at the cost associated with tagging. Like you take tagging now in Ireland, you buy the tag, you do the BBD test, you pay for that. You do the genotype test, the DNA test, you pay for that. Replacement tag, you have to pay for that. And then there's labour and all that. And here in Brazil, there's none of that at all. And similarly to antibiotic use, I went into a store, bought the antibiotic, bring it home to my farm. In Ireland, I have to go to a vet. The vet has to consult me. The vet has to make a professional opinion in terms of what antibiotic to use. He or she has to record the purchase of that antibiotic into the practice. They have to record the sale of that antibiotic. Then the farmer has to record the purchase of that antibiotic onto the farm. He or she also has to record the use of that antibiotic, and also record what antibiotic wasn't used on that farm in that bottle. So the huge compliance costs with all that, driving that standard that European consumers want and were told that they need in terms of to buy Irish food and European food. And here we have this substandard product coming in that nobody's really asking any questions at all about.
Okay, well, look, we're not going to solve the problem, but let's hope that our friends in Brussels will make the proper decisions, and that whatever beef does come in, what is it, 99,000 tons?
Yes.
Coming into Europe initially anyway. Let's hope that is of a standard and that it will not in any way affect the European consumer.
That's it, Jim, exactly. And look, we have had really good feedback from our MEPs. I know there has been representations made to different authorities in Brussels, and look, this story's been picked up by a lot of countries. I've done interviews with Croatian journalists, Swedish journalists, French journalists, Italian journalists, so it definitely is moving its way around Europe, and hopefully it'll be able to fight some pressure down.
Okay, well, Adam, it's been a pleasure talking to you as always. Thanks very much for joining us on Tip FM this morning.
Thanks, Jim.
That, listeners, was Adam Woods from the Irish Farmers Journal. In this segment of the programme, listeners, this morning we're going to feature Teagasc Dairy Conference that took place in Clonmel on last Wednesday. So we hear from four of the contributors. We start off with Lawrence Shalhoub and then followed on by three of his colleagues.
As the chairman said, as Liam said, milk markets in 2025 have been very good in the early and mid part, and I suppose have changed pretty dramatically in the last few months. And I suppose there's a key lesson for that for all of us. You know, how we manage milk price volatility, and there's going to be conversations as we go out throughout today, but how we manage milk price volatility will be extremely important as we go forward. But not alone just managing it at farm level, but also managing it at processor level. Because some of the extreme movements we have seen in the last, couple of months, are really damaging to both farmers, but also to processors. So we need to look at the model that we're operating in terms of how milk is, maybe potentially how milk is paid for and how milk is priced going forward, given those changes that we're starting to see. That's the first point. The second point I want to say about 2025, obviously the beef price increase has been amazing. I don't think anyone, if we look at and maybe our market analyst, when he comes up on the screen in a second, when he talks, he might say that he expected that beef price, but none of the people I talked to say that they expected that beef price increase. But now that it's here, they're expecting it to stay, right? So they're very confident, the market analysts, about beef price going forward. So that's a real opportunity, and it's a real opportunity for dairy farmers as well as beef farmers, because dairy farmers not alone produce milk, but they also produce beef. And, a couple of years ago when we were looking at calves, as a problem. The industry was looking at calves as a problem. How stupid we were. Calves is probably one of the biggest opportunities we have in the industry today. And that's the way we need to look at it, and how quickly that can change. So for all farmers here today, beef is going to be really important. Calf price, cull cow price is going to be really important in terms of family farm income or profitability next year, and we need to look and lean into exploiting that opportunity. But I suppose also when we think about it, are we generating, calves and increasing the CBV and increasing the value of calves is really important, but also I suppose we need to be sure that we're generating enough high BI heifers. And if we look at the number of dairy heifer replacements we've been generating for the last couple of years, it has been declining. And we really need to look at it. What's our vision for the industry going forward? Is that a static industry? Because, at the moment, with the number of replacement heifers we're generating, it's a declining industry. And we need to just think about what we look at, even individual farms, what we're thinking as we look forward. Just in terms of 2025, milk output in 2025 will come very close to 2022 numbers. And 2022 numbers was something like 710,000 tonnes of milk solids. 2022 will be very, very, very similar. So I suppose that's something that we need to just, the growth that we've seen in milk is going to add strongly to the bottom line. I suppose in terms of pasture production, if we look at 2025, and I'm conscious and I'm in an area that suffered probably severely in terms of drought or soil moisture deficits throughout 2025, we'll hear more about that today and how we predict and how we manage grass growth. But for many parts of the country, and many parts, even farmers sitting here, will have seen probably 2025 as being probably one of the best years from a grass growth point of view. Pasture-based data, and I think Joe is going to show it in one of his slides later, 2025 is going to be probably one of the highest in terms of grass growth, or very similar to the highest years that we've seen. Ensuring that we maximise grass growth, and this is going to be really important as we face into 2026, maximising grass growth on farm, minimising the amount of, substitution we have for alternative feeds is going to be important in the overall story. I suppose, as we stand here and facing into 2026, and our chairman mentioned around milk price, we have to talk about, the potential profitability. While 2025 is going to be amazing in terms of profitability, a couple of farmers I talked to outside in the lobby told me it'll be their best year ever. 2026 is going to be a different picture, and we need to be ready for it. And a lot of what you hear today, both in the morning and in the afternoon, will be around setting ourselves up to manage through 2026. Because as the chairman said, there is going to be pressure on profitability and family farm income in 2026. How do we minimise the exposure of our farms and our families? And that's what it's about. It's about getting through these downturns in terms of price. So that's something that we want to talk about as we go through today, and in particular around the cost of production. So if we look at cost of production at farm level, after Ukraine in 2022, costs increased by 50%. So that's essentially what happened at farm level. Up to 2022, but the previous 10 years, costs hadn't changed at all, right? Virtually static. But after 22, costs were up by 50%. And that made sense because the agricultural input price index had increased by 50%. So perfectly acceptable. The input cost, the input price that you're paying had gone up by 50%, so costs went up by 50%. Since 2022, that agriculture input index has dropped by half. So it's come back down a lot, but costs at farm level haven't come down. So that's something that we're going to challenge you as you go through today, is how do we focus back on costs at farm level? How do we take out some of the costs that have creeped into the system? And 2026 is going to be an opportunity to do that, right? And that's what we're leaving it out there as an opportunity to focus on costs. So I've only a couple of more points to make. First thing is on water quality. Teagasc launched its 8 Actions for Change water quality campaign, over a year ago now. And I suppose it's really about putting practical steps in your hands to implement at farm level. And that's going to be really important as we look forward. So looking at ways that you can, on your farm, reduce nutrient loss, and remembering that any nutrient loss from the farm is nutrient that could have grown grass for you. So the focus of, when we talk about nitrates and we talk about water quality, just see it as a lost opportunity. We need to focus on retaining as much of those nutrients as possible, and essentially that's what that campaign does. It's around maximising value by retaining a lot of the nutrients. And the chairman mentioned the derogation, and I suppose Teagasc has been heavily involved around developing different, robust scientific information for DAFM in that story. So things like, for example, increased slurry storage requirements. That's some piece of work that Teagasc is involved in. Also in terms of nutrient distribution and managing nutrients on the milking platform. Teagasc has been heavily involved working with DAFM on that. But I suppose also Teagasc did a very important report in terms of what the impact of the loss of the derogation would be on those 7,000 farmers that are in derogation. And the numbers are scary. And many of you are here in the room. On average, for those 7,000 farmers, family farm income would reduce by €43,500. We'd lose about 200,000 dairy cows in terms of the number of dairy cows, and milk output would decline by 15%. And again, that 15% decline in milk output, can you imagine what impact that may have at processor level in terms of costs of processing and even the viability of some of our processors? So it's really, really important, and I suppose that the chairman mentioned that derogation drives the efficiency in a pasture-based setting. And the reality is that in Europe, Ireland is really the only grass-based system that's left. And a derogation in Ireland is not about stocking rate. Derogation is around allowing you to, because the animals don't produce the manure indoors like they do in continental Europe, and that manure can be distributed anywhere you want because it's all captured in a pasture-based setting, that's not possible. I suppose, just in terms of just the last 2 points in, and just to mention TB has become a very serious problem on a lot of farms. It's something that we need to be much more cognizant of, and I suppose the new regulations that DAFM are going to bring in, I think will create some pain for some farmers, but the reality is that, we can't go on the way we are in terms of TB. So we need to, I suppose, all work together to, reduce the exposure. Second last point is on milk quality. It seems like Tipperary have all the winners, right? So they stole the Lee McCarthy, or whatever they did with the Lee McCarthy, right? Well, they got a handy one. And I'm from Clare, so that's we took it the year before, so it's fine. As long as you give it back to us, that's okay. They've got, the Kennedy family. I saw them here in terms of last year's Milk Quality Award winners. The Ryans are this year's Milk Quality Award winners. Really, really, really positive in terms of what they're doing in terms of milk quality. And if we look at milk quality and the Cell Check programme and AHI's work is really important because, all good milk quality does is opens a pathway to, better markets, better returns. So higher milk quality not alone will increase your profitability at farm level, but also will open pathways to new markets and new opportunities. And that's the way we need to look at it. So milk quality is very important and will continue to be very important. So just finally, just to finish up, it's 10 years since milk quotas were abolished. And, if you stand back and look at what has happened since then, you're talking about milk output has doubled, right? So milk output has doubled in that period of time. Cow numbers have increased by 50%. Family farm income, on average, if you go to previous 5 years to milk quota removal to now, has increased by roughly 80%. Now, markets have changed as well in between. So these have been very, very positive developments. In the meantime, as an industry, we've dealt with nitrates questions, we've dealt with emissions questions, we've dealt with CAF discussions in terms of the opportunities around calves, and generation renewal is probably our most recent one. So there has been many challenges. And if you think back what has happened in the last 10 years, the nitrates, let's say we're hopefully on the right road there. Emissions, the industry is going right direction in terms of emissions reductions. If you think of calves, we saw it as a problem, or the industry may have seen it as a problem a couple of years ago. Now they see it as potentially as an opportunity. And generational renewal will become an opportunity when we, I suppose, all work together to solve it. So my question to you as an audience and as we face into the rest of the conference is, what opportunities do we see in the next 10 years? Let's forget about the problems for today. Let's think about the opportunities and see where we can go as an industry. So thank you very much.
I caught up with 3 people, Donna Parry, Elodie Ruel and Sarah Walsh. And we're going to start off with Donna. Donna, what are you going to be telling everybody?
So the Economic Breeding Index, the EBI that's been used by dairy breeders, it's 25 years old next year. So I'm going to take us down a memory lane, a nostalgic view of what has happened over the last 25 years. And just to put a number on it, the EBI has delivered 5.5 billion to the Irish sector over the last 20 years. So we're going to go into some of the technical details. We're also going to provide some practical advice to dairy farmers on how they select bulls this coming breeding season.
And okay, looking back then over the 24 years, did we start from a very low base? Because I know we have improved considerably and the figures that you're just after giving us feed into that. But were we at a very low base as far as EBI was concerned?
We certainly were at a low base, but you have to remember in the environment there was the milk quotas, which kind of restricted us to be at a low base. But more importantly, prior to the year 2001, when we introduced the EBI, we selected exclusively for milk production. And what we saw was that fertility and health went backwards. So the real nuts of the EBI was actually selecting for fertility, for improving fertility in tandem with milk solids production.
Percentage-wise then, to what degree have we raised milk solids?
So over that 25-year period, we've increased milk solids by around 50 kgs and increased the percentages of fat and protein by around 0.5%. Now, you have to remember that that is done for free because breeding is essentially a free technology. Farmers have to put the cows and calves. It's the same process as putting the semen of a good bull into a cow as putting a bad bull into a cow. So that was a free increase of around 50 kilos of milk solids potential.
And how much cooperation then did... I know you got cooperation from the farming community, but then again from the AI stations, you got cooperation from them as well because they have to go out and source these high EBI bulls.
Yeah, and Ireland would be relatively unique, I think, when it comes to the level of cooperation that we have across the entire dairy sector. And it's not just the AI industry, it's the farmers, but also the milk processors. So just take, for example, we were breeding for the A plus B minus C milk pricing system in 2001. And that was around 6 to 7 years then afterwards is when the milk processors enacted that. And that's critical for us because farmers have to get rewarded for their particular breeding policies.
Okay, and it's now more important than ever, given the way milk prices have gone in 2025, because nobody foresaw what was going to happen in 2025.
Exactly, and this is crucial, is that when your prices are low, and we are price takers, you must keep your cost base low. And the cost base, one of the main drivers in the costs are your variable costs associated with feed, but also fertility. And they're two huge components of our EBI, but at the same time not sacrificing the increase in revenues from milk solids. And that's the real beauty of breeding. You can improve things concurrently.
Okay, let me come to Ian Holy. What are you telling Irish dairy farmers
So
today?
what I'm going to talk about today is about the Mo's grass growth prediction program. So that's how we are predicting grass growth on more than 80 farms across the country at the minute. So telling different farmers, how much grass is going to grow next week and how that prediction started, how that program started, how is that working, and that, those data are available for anyone up to RTE farmer forecast on a Sunday.
Okay, and how much grass can we grow in December?
Well, it depends on the December, but at the minute I would say we're, with the cold weather and so on, we're probably not growing much. So if we're growing 2 kg per day, that's all we are at the minute. But, there's some December, and especially with future climate, we might be growing way more because December might be warmer. So maybe we'll grow more grass in the future in December than we are now.
December and January would be, and maybe a bit of February, be the worst months for grass growth, or any week in those. What about the best week in the year? Now, we know that the best week for milk production is in May.
Yeah.
So what's the best week for grass production?
Yeah, it's the same, and you could hit, depending on the farm, depending on if you have clover or not, depending how much fertilizer you have, depending on the year, once again, you could hit 100, 120 for those weeks. So, yeah.
Well, of course, farmers are very restricted on the amount of fertilizer they can now put out. So, they were not throwing fertilizer willy-nilly. So there must be an optimum. What would be the optimum?
Well, it depends. So the limit at the minute, if you're in derogation, is 214 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. So if you don't have clover, it's probably your optimum. Now, it depends, once again, on the weather conditions. So don't put it out if you're in a drought, for example, because the fertilizer won't be taken by the grass. Sorry. Yeah. But it depends then, if you have clover in your farm, you don't have to put as much. So I think the optimum for the moment, that's what we're recommending, is 150 if you have good clover content on your paddock. But once again, you need to have clover in the sward for that to be working.
And how important then is the variety of grass, the grass variety? How important is that as far as grass growth is concerned?
Very important. So I'm a modeler. The model is not taking into account grass variety at the minute. Sarah may know way more about this than me, but yes, that would be important too.
That would be important. Sarah, what are you on about today?
So today I'm going to be talking about the Pasture Profit Index, or the PPI, which is a perennial ryegrass variety selection tool. So it's a decision support tool that farmers can use when they're choosing their perennial ryegrass variety. So you were asking how important the variety is. Yes. So we do have differences between varieties. So there's different traits in the PPI, and dry matter yield is one of them. So we have it split up seasonally, spring, summer and autumn. If farmers are picking any variety, they want to pick a high spring yield particularly, and high autumn yield as well for their grazing swords, so that they can get the highest growth during those low periods. But we can see when we look on commercial farms that there could be between a tonne and 1.5 tonne between the top and bottom varieties on PPI.
Okay, so you're also looking at grasses and the varieties that are best for the silage.
Yeah, so there's other traits as well. So another trait is the silage. So that's looking at first and second cut silage. We also look at the herbage quality, or the grass quality. There's also persistency in there. And then we have the grazing utilisation trait as well. So at the moment, that's a star rating index. And I'll be talking about today how that's moving to economic value like the rest of the traits.
Any farmer then that's using the varieties that produce the most, how much better is their production of grass than somebody who has something that doesn't exist anymore? Maybe I'm asking you something that goes back into my time farming, and that would be old permanent pasture.
Yeah, so we can see even from, if we look at Teagasc research, we can see that the genetic gain from perennial ryegrass varieties is about 40 dry matter per hectare per year. So we can see, even we're updating the base values now, and I'll be talking about that today, but even genetic gain over the last 13 years since this was done is half a tonne. So if you take that, over a large number of years, there is quite a substantial increase in herbage production.
Where do we source the best grasses? What country in the world do we source the best grasses from?
Well, I suppose they're coming from a range of places. I suppose it's not a lot. Like, they could be coming from the UK or other places in Europe, so they are coming from a variety of places. So I suppose we test them here in Ireland to see how they perform on Irish climatic conditions. So all the evaluations, they're all evaluated in Ireland by the department.
Okay, one last question to you then. What's the takeaway that you want to give farmers at this event today? Yes,
I suppose today I want to highlight that farmers need to choose the right variety for what the paddock is going to be used for. So if it is a grazing sward, you want to focus on your grazing utilisation, that spring and autumn herbage production, and then your quality. And then moving towards your silage swards or on your outblock, you want to focus on that silage subindex, and again your spring herbage production and your quality as well.
Okay, thanks very much. And what about your takeaway?
So my takeaway would be that the grass growth prediction can really help farmers to look ahead. So instead of looking at what's happening right now in your farm, you can see faster if a grass deficit is coming up, if a grass surplus is coming up, or anything. So really the goal of the grass growth prediction is to try to give farmer information faster and more accurate in their decision.
Thank you very much. And you, Darragh?
So breeding has delivered over the last 25 years. The tools are available to be used, and people just have to really put in the effort into predicting or identifying the best bulls based on the available tools.
Thanks very much. Listeners, my final guest this morning is Pat Carroll, who is the chairperson of the IFA in South Tipperary, and he has a very important event coming up on Tuesday evening in the Manila Hotel, and that is the annual AGM. Good morning, Pat, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jim.
Okay, Pat, now, what's up and what's going to happen at your AGM?
Well, I suppose this is my final AGM, I suppose, Jim, after I have my 4 years done, and I suppose it's one of the great things within IFA. You do your term and you're out, and you know where the finish line is, but it also means you can't hang around and you can't go back into the position again. So it has been an honour to do the 4 years. So I suppose, look, to see out my final AGM, we decided there that we'd get Liam Cahill, the All-Ireland tip winning senior hurling manager, as a guest speaker on the night. So it would be, Liam's roots are in rural Ireland and farming, and as well, like, you know. So and I think as well as that, we'll say the integration of rural Ireland, like you have the GA clubs, you have, we'll say, in every parish, similar to IFA branches are in every parish, and I think we've very similar issues from that point of view. And I suppose also on the night we have Honorary Life membership will be presented to John Tobin of the Kilcash branch, and award the receiver of that award. And also, I suppose it was put to us there that was suggested maybe on the night as well that we'd have a bucket collection in aid of the Dylan Quirk Foundation, because a fantastic foundation that has helped so many people all across the county, and members had wanted maybe to show their support for the Dylan Quirk Foundation on the night as well. So there'll be a bucket collection probably on the door coming in. So if you have a few bob, throw it into the bucket, and we'll gather it up and pass it on to the Dylan Quirk Foundation.
That's a very worthy cause. Well done for doing that, because not alone have they helped GA players, but they've also helped players in other sports, you know, to get themselves looked after. So that's absolutely fantastic. Well done there. What about elections? Have you elections coming up?
Well, we have for chair. County chair has to be filled, and also we have our dairy chair and beef chair has also to be filled. So that's as what I have as of today. Sorry, also secretary as well. The secretary position will be up as well on the night. So look, we're working on it there at the moment. So we'll have elections on the night if that is required. Okay,
so it'd be a normal AGM except for your very special guest, Liam Cahill. Yeah, so. And I'm quite sure Liam will be a big attraction for the members to come and attend, and then they'll get the opportunity. If there is a vote for a position within the IFA in South Tipperary, they'll be there and they'll be able to cast their vote.
Yes, definitely. Look, I think we'd like to honour and show support, like, you know, for the Liam Cahill and the Tipperary hurling team. Mm-hmm. They give us a great summer, and like as a group, and like, you know, we really would like to honour that, and Liam will give a good presentation too. And I think there's a lot of similarities there between GA and farming in other ways. Like, mm-hmm. You know, there's much talk about generation renewal. Well, if we don't have young people coming back to rural Tipperary, not only is farming affected, but the GA clubs are affected, and the schools are affected, and other sports clubs, and you name it. Like, you know, so I think there's a commonality there that is important, mm-hmm. that needs to be, I suppose, examined to know what policies or what we can do to attract. Not all our young people would want to come back, but some of them would like to come back and rear a family on those farms where they were reared themselves. Some of those farms may not generate a full-time income, but our children are very well educated now across the board, and there is possibility of opportunities of them maybe coming back in and starting a business and part-time farming or whatever, but rearing their families in rural areas, and especially with the likes of broadband and where it is at now. Like, you could have an office in any parish in Tipperary or in New York, nobody would know, and times have changed. So I do think we need to look at that, and I think sometimes generation renewal is seen as only being targeted at those that can go on to have a full-time income from farming, and I think that's something we need to kind of move away from and examine all the options, because the most important asset we have in Tipperary is our people, and like, for social sustainability, we need people living in rural areas in all our parishes. So I think that's a really important one that's common between the GA, IFA and other organisations in rural Ireland.
Okay, that's the AGM. Let's look at the two big issues out there at the moment. I've already been speaking to Adam Woods with regard to what's happening out in Brazil and the effect that might have on the Mercosur deal. And then again, I suppose we're waiting for Brussels to tell us for certain, do we or do we not have a derogation?
Yeah, look, I had that work that Adam Woods and Tomás Burke done there in Brazil. Like, I mean, I think it's flabbergasting to think that it was ongoing, that there wasn't more impetus and more examining done what exactly was going on in Brazil by Europe. Like, we're drowning in red tape and bureaucracy, and we see the possibility of any product that a consumer may consume in Europe coming into the European Union without the checks and balances and the equalisation of standards. Like, it's shocking. I mean, absolutely shocking to think that the damage, and it's not just the damage to the marketplace, like, this for the consumer, and as regards antimicrobial resistance and all the issues with food, like the standards we have. And I think the real issue here is where the consumer is assuming that all food within the European Union is to that highest standard and to the highest quality that they expect, and for some source like that to be coming in. It's just absolutely shocking and unbelievable. And look, well done to those that exposed it. And this is an ongoing story, like, and we'll see how it will evolve. But like, I mean, this isn't finished by any means. And like, if selling cars or whatnot out of Europe is that important to put their consumers at risk, well, there's some serious questions to be asked of it going forward. And I suppose the other one then, as regards the derogation, from what we hear, the Commission are in favour, but we're hearing 3 years, but we don't know the terms and conditions. We don't know what red tape will be imposed on top of what we have already. That won't come until the 9th of December. So you certainly couldn't say the derogation is over the line and we have a derogation. You could have a derogation by name, but is it of any use? Is it a workable solution going forward? And 3 years again is very, very short. Like, I mean, once you get up and going, like, we're talking about having to build extra slurry storage and more expense and cost of production going up. 3 years is not a very long time to get a lot of these works done and paid for. So definitely the 9th of December, that vote and what we will see on the terms and conditions following that are going to have a huge impetus on what is happening on farms going forward.
Okay, Pat, before I let you go, will you give the time and the details and the place for the AGM next Tuesday evening?
Okay, Jim. South Tipperary IFA County Executive AGM is on next Tuesday, the 2nd of December, in Hotel Manila, Clonmel, at 8 p.m. And we will have Liam Cahill as our guest speaker, Honorary Life John Tobin, and there will also be that bucket collection as I spoke of there. And look, if you keep it in mind, whatever you can, give a donation on the night and for a very worthy cause. Okay, thanks very much, Pat, for joining us this morning. That listener was Pat Carroll, the chairperson of the IFA in South Tipperary. And that, listeners, is Ag Report for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you'll join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock. And after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.